All right, so the next step is going to be picking out what you're going to do as far as a reel seat and grip material. There's so many materials on the market right now, such as Cork, there's EVA, there is the wind grips, which is kind of a rubbery style material, carbon fiber, several types of carbon fiber, 3D print, and actual woven. I've decided to go with actual woven carbon fiber. Now, instead of doing it myself, I'm just going to get some pre-made up pieces. I've measured what I want. I've decided the look I want and the reel seat and everything. So here's what I've decided to do. You can take a look at it and see what you think. This piece just slides on. We've got the next piece here, which is the aft grip, already marked out with tape. Reel seat, American Tackle, American Rod Builders out of California, and just a simple aluminum reel seat, black, size 16. And then same aft grip, or foregrip, excuse me. Now, I did have to take a Forstner to the foregrip because I like it everything counter set so that it fits real nice and flush, as you can kind of see there. Well, no, want to glue that up just yet, and I'll show you why later. But again, that's what I've chosen, the carbon fiber. Show you up close here. All right, guys. So next step is to mark your layouts using either a marker or a pen of some sort. Doesn't really matter what. You can use tape also. I like to use a Sharpie because this is all going to be under the grip and reel seat, so that way it's going to be permanent, but you won't see it. So let's take a look at what we got here. I think we can see this pretty good here. Pull that back a little bit, center it up. There we go. All right, so I've already positioned everything where I want to have it, okay? So I'm going to start at the back here, where this is about the only piece that really isn't going to move. This right here, that's it. You can put it back here, but it's only going to go so far up the shaft or up the blank. So now with that in mind, that's where I want to mark it off. So what I'm going to do is take the Sharpie here. Making sure that it stays put as I spin it. Get to where that guide is, you get a little backfill to do otherwise. Alright, take that butt off, and there we have it. Probably doesn't show up real well, but for the most part, we've got a first mark. Now, I'm going to put this on to where we need her. Make sure that lines up properly. And do this next piece. Then all we're going to do is keep working our way up the blank, one component at a time, sliding it down into position. And then once it's in position, we're going to mark the top of it. All right, so we got that one there. So now the aft part of the reel seat comes down. Again, hold that in place. Mark that one. All right. So now, let's take all this off. This piece won't come yet because I've got this seated. But for the most part, these are arbors. I'm going to show you how to build those in just a quick second. So I've got one mark there. I've got another mark there. And another mark there. Last but not least, last thing we're going to do is mark this reel seat up here. So again, we'll put her back together real quick, assemble it how we want it. It's called dry fitting. It's dry fitted so that we're right on the spots we need to be. Everything slides down. And now, after we got her dry fitted, we can do the top of that reel seat. And that reel seat should be positioned exactly where it was if you've measured everything properly. So, alright, you got her done? Alright guys, so in a nutshell, what an arbor is it's a buildup of, in this case, I'm going to use masking tape to take up the space of the circumference of the reel seat, which as you see is wobbly because that I believe is 16 millimeters, and the blank, which heck in this case this is under a half inch, way under a half inch. So there's a fairly good sized hole. I don't know if you can see in there or not, probably not. See if we can turn this. It's a one-piece rod, so not going to be able to see in there. But needless to say, it is a much larger diameter inside than what the blank is. So we need to fill that gap. And the way we do that is, once we have everything marked, we kind of know where everything's going. So we're going to go ahead real quick here, and we're going to take a piece of masking tape. I've already pre-measured this once. So for the most part, we're going to set that right there. And part of the key to this is always making sure it's tight. So what I like to do is stick it down in sections. That way I can kind of almost use its own, I don't know, adhesive to keep it tight. So now I'm just rolling this, which hopefully you can see that. Kind of have to work backwards here because I'm right-handed and it's just easier for me this way. So again, we're just rolling that blank, making sure that it's tight. Alright, get a little relief here, put a little more down here, pressing up against it, keeping it tight. Keeping it tight. Alright, take some more relief. Should be able to finish this wrap with this one. And we'll see what we got. We might need a little more. I'm packing this extra tight, so might be a little tighter than the first time I did it. Usually the case. Because when you're dry fitting it, you tend to do things fast. When you're actually building it, you tend to do things right. Alright, so let's just see. Hey, look at that, we got the right amount. Now what you want is what I'm doing here. You want it to be too big. It won't go up anymore. So that way you can start taking a little bit off at a time to get that magic perfect size. And again, what I'm doing is I'm taking about a half a wrap off now in sections. Again, about a half a wrap there. Pull that off. Tuck it back down. Try to slide that reel seat. Oh, there we go. And there's our perfect size. Now, that is money. That right there is not moving at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide this up even more. And then we're going to do the same thing to the bottom side, okay? So we're going to build at least two of them. I'll probably do a third just to give it a little bit more reinforcement in the middle. So again, stay tuned. I'll show you that in a second. see, but so that is right there. Alright guys, so I'm going to slide this reel seat off here, okay, and I just did the back arbor here, and I'm going to do the middle arbor here. I'm just going to kind of equal them out, equal distance, doesn't matter where it goes really, I just want to give it some rigidity in the middle here. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to change tape sizes here. I'm going to go with I think this is a 1-inch tape here versus the 1/2-inch tape. Now what's going to happen is when we put our epoxy in here, the epoxy is going to fill in between the tape and connect the rod blank to the reel seat. Everywhere else where there's tape, it'll just turn the tape into a brick, basically, rock hard. So this tape, you don't have to really worry about anything, you know, water or anything like that, ever making it soft and weakening it, because again, one, it's going to be encased in epoxy, but two, won't be exposed to anything. Which brings up another interesting point. Heat. One of the things you guys saw me break down this rod with was an alcohol torch. So don't leave your rods in your car. It is the #1 killer of epoxy. Doesn't matter what it is. Even golf clubs, guys. See these guys losing their heads at the driving range off their golf clubs, and they wonder why after they've been sitting in their trunk all day and it's 100 degrees outside and their trunk's probably 150. Might as well take a heat torch to it, or you know, some kind of a heat gun, and melt it right off. So alright, so there we go. We've got the aft reel seat arbor, the center reel seat arbor, and the I guess you call it the front reel seat arbor. We'll measure this one real quick here and see what we got to take off. Again, you do that simply by sliding them up, and if it doesn't fit, you must have quit. No, take some off. Alright, come on you. And it's always a pain to get this 1-inch tape. That's why I like to do multiples of 1/2-inch, but again, that looks pretty close right there. A little tight. We'll take one more full wrap off about right there. See what that does for us. Ooh, look at that. That's party. Oh yeah, that's nice and tight. Alright, so there we have her. That's where she belongs. And in turn, that ain't going nowhere. A nice tight fit at the top, nice tight fit in the center, and nice tight fit at the bottom, so that once everything is glued up, that won't go anywhere. Alright, so one of the steps in this building process now is going to be marking the blank to make sure that we get the reel seat on properly, and so that it matches, it's centered properly and matches the guides. One of the tricks to this is almost every manufacturer takes the rod information, the size, the power, the length, all that, and puts that directly in line with the guides. So if you scroll up here and you see, put the guides at 12 o'clock, you should come down here. This writing is exactly centered at 12 o'clock. So we are going to use that as a template, if you will. And down here, where we need to set everything on the actual part of the blank, the fatter section of the blank, what we're going to do is we're going to use a little piece of tape here, about, well, a little bit less than the section of rod blank that you're replacing here. Set that on there. See if we can hold this in this position. Perfect. Now what I want to try to do with this is get it just off the center line, because I want to use a Sharpie to draw that center line, and if this is sitting on top of it, of course you can't put the Sharpie there. So carefully as you can place this down. Boom. Oh, I don't think I got her centered in the middle. Let's see. It looks pretty good there. Maybe back here we're off just a skosh. Come in right there. There we go. All right, I can live with that. Now, take your Sharpie and draw, trace along that tape. Be very careful. Good to go. Pop that off. And there you have it. I don't know if you can see that or not with the way the light is, but there is a center line down there. So now when I set my reel seat on, that one will kind of give me a reminder to make sure before I glue it and let it glue off to the side to center it, but it'll also give me an idea of which way is going to be down, so that every other component that I put, if there's any bad sides to it, we'll make sure to get those on the downside, so when we're looking at the rod in our hands, we won't see the blemishes or defects or whatever there may be. So again, that's finding the center line of the blank, guys. Got to make sure to do that for the reel seat purposes, otherwise you are screwed. Hang tight, we'll get to that next step of gluing. Alright guys, so let's show you what the Pro Paste is here. Pro Paste is a two-part epoxy, like I said, but it's in paste form, as opposed to we're all used to the tubes that you squirt. This is specific for rod building. You got your part A, your part B, and you just have to make sure two things. One, you're using equal parts. Two, you stir the living crap out of it. I don't care how much you stir this. If you think you stirred it enough, you have it. Keep stirring it. Stir it for a minimum of 5 minutes. Watch a timer. Set a timer on your clock, because what you think is 5 minutes ends up being about a minute and a half, and this stuff then doesn't cure properly, and it doesn't set properly, and it's a mess. So learn from others' experiences. Don't learn the hard way from your own experiences. Mix it 5 minutes minimum. All right, now while that's sitting, another thing we're going to do is I like to take a big arbor center pin and use that as a secondary guide, even though we drew that line on the blank, so we know where center is, right? Can never be too safe. So we are going to lock this bad boy down. Make sure she is tight. All right. Now you can kind of see we've got a guide. This will tell us whether we're left, right, or straight on. A little bit better than a spinning reel will, because it's perpendicular. So, all right. Next. So let's go ahead for real quick. Dry assembler. Slide that one up. Slide that one up. Spinning it. We're going to slide that one up, and we are home right there. Set this up like that. That looks good. So, alright. Right now this epoxy is still really hot. We're going to let this set for just a couple more minutes. When I say hot, that just means it's thin. And we want to let it get a little bit thicker and that way it's a little bit more manageable to stay on where you want it instead of push around so much. So stay tuned here. We will show you how this glues up. Alright, rubbing alcohol, something to clean up with not only your hands but your project, because you're going to get really messy. So what we want to do is we want to slide this reel seat down. We're going to start from the back, and we're going to start adding some epoxy to her. Just taking that popsicle stick, work our way up to the top, from the bottom to the top. Now I'm going to pull this off real quick, just because it's going to be easier to work with it, spinning it. And what you're trying to do is fill in that gap with as much epoxy, touching as much of that blank as possible, and coating all of that tape at the same time so that it hardens when it's all done. Again, you can't really get too much of this because it's going to come out. So, I mean, you can, don't get me wrong. My point being is if there's too much, it's all going to come out. So you don't want to use too much, otherwise it goes to waste and just more to clean up. Alright, this is pretty equally laid out, or as equal as I'm going to get it with a popsicle stick. Now, grab this reel seat, slide her on up. As we slide this up, we are going to be twisting this and working this in many, many, many ways. Forward, back, forward, spinning it, trying to get as much of that epoxy to fill that void right there. Doing a really good job there. Move up to that next one, come back, pull it back, spin it, fill that void. Alright, spin that upside down there to get some of that epoxy worked around. Use this to help put her right back on there. Again, keeping as much of it as you can on there. Alright. Okay. So about right there's what we got. We're going to take our popsicle stick here. We're going to work it around real quick to get some of this excess off. We're just going to put it right up on top of this inset. Again, working all that around there, taking it off, putting it right back on up here. Ooh. Oh no, that's not supposed to happen, gang. Get that cleaned up. That's why we got that alcohol ready right there. Okay. Now, we're also going to take a large amount of epoxy, put it right on that rod blank for that front grip. So when that comes down, that fills in and in turn connects to it. You can put a little bit more in there. Set that down for a second. All right, more than enough. So now, slide this back, slide this over. Again, up and down, working it up and down, working it, boys and girls, working it. And getting a little bit too much epoxy now. Now, I'm going to set her down and clean her real quick. Then we're going to take some of this off with the popsicle stick. All right. Clean towel here. Some rubbing alcohol on her. We're going to get her cleaned up. Don't forget, you got to make sure your reel seat's still in place. I'm sure it's not perfect, that is. So have to make sure to get her perfect, otherwise she's gonna dry crooked, and you don't want that. We'll get to clean up the rod blank up here, depending on what you're doing with a winding check in front of your foregrip. I am not doing any, as you see. Al Naturel. So we definitely want to get as much epoxy off of that rod blank, because I am going to do some thread work, but again, it's all about the little details, professional versus amateur. Alright, now let's check the guide, or check the reel seat. Make sure that's lined up. Looks good. Reel seat's pointing in the proper direction. Looks good from that angle. We're going to look at it from the other angle here. Just a skosh that way. Check it again. Check your placement for your seat. Make sure your grip and your seat are together. Alright, everything's positioned properly for the time being. We just need to get a little bit more cleaned up. So now we'll do that with a paper towel. And lots of alcohol, which I don't have lots of. That is pretty much it. We are golden. Not going to pick this up because I don't want to twist it, but for the most part, you can kind of get a good idea. She is on there, looking good. We're going to let that sit 24 hours, and then we'll come back. We'll do the aft grip, we'll do the reel, or the blank cover, and we'll do the fighting butt. Okay, gang, so let me give you a pro tip here. what I just did off camera, I probably should have recorded. I ended up reaming the inside of the aft grip out so that it's very loose. Fits very, very, very loose on here now. You can see how that spins. The reason is when I put epoxy on there, if it sits real tight, it's going to push that epoxy right back out. So what you want to do is take it, oh, I don't know, one size larger than what the actual rod blank is, and then put your arbors back on. Now I put 3/4 inch tape arbors, so you can see that's exactly how much I took it down, because before it fit nice and tight, now it's real loose, spins around. Once I slide this up again, now it's tight again. Okay, so not real tight, but tight enough that once I push this epoxy, or push this up and the epoxy's on there, instead of pushing all that epoxy back out, it's going to sit in between here and under here, and that's what's going to keep it holding it down. So again, little pro tip. Make sure to ream out your grips slightly larger than the actual size of your blank, and then arbor them back up. That way the epoxy will stay nice and tight in there. All right, gang, so what you want to do is you want to dry fit everything and get your arbors ready. So basically what I've done, you want to work your way from the top, the tip, back to the butt. Okay, so we've already done our foregrip, we've already done our reel seat, they're glued on. So now what we're going to do is we've arbored up, this is the aft grip, we've put 3 arbors in place here, here, and here, so that way we can go ahead and epoxy this up, slide it up, and the epoxy again will seat and set in there. Now what I also did is I took the next steps to go ahead and build the arbors for the reel, or the the blank cover. So the carbon fiber, it's going to be a split grip. This will go in there like that, and then also I put 3 more on for the butt grip, or the fighting butt here. So that way everything is already basically seated. This little blue tape here is just to show me which end is forward, and that way I can get them on there. And you might note that I did end up adding on an addition to this. This is going to be, I'm going to do some thread work over this. I needed to fill the gap between the factory size and the size I really wanted it to be and needed, so we just made do with the old 3D carbon fiber versus the real carbon fiber. And we glued that on over a old blank that I had and just kind of spot glued it using crazy glue. And then after I got it all set, I went inside with epoxy and epoxied it and then reamed it out. So it's all the same, but we're going to cover it up anyway, so it doesn't matter. Just needs to fill in that void. So, all right, that's the next step. We're going to go ahead and slide this down. And this will only go down to here. This arbor is bigger than these arbors. So once I get that down, I can't go any further down, but that's why you dry fit it. You set everything on there, and then you start doing your arbors. Now, once I slide this up, I've already got 1 more arbor over here ready to go, and that'll go in place right here, right up against that grip. And so again, I've already pre-measured it, know how long it is. That way, once I slide it up and the epoxy's all wet, I won't have to freak out and go, oh my gosh, I forgot to do this. Mixed up some Pro Paste, part A, part B. Put that in the light so you can see it. And with that in mind, the Pro Paste, as I mentioned last night, when you first mix it up for 5 minutes. I've mixed this straight for 5 minutes. As you can see, it's still a little bit hot, but it's starting to set up pretty good. When it thickens like that, this is about the time you're ready to use it. So after you mix it, you want to let it sit for a few minutes. Otherwise, it'll just be so runny that it's like, kind of like pudding. You don't want it real runny. See how it's sitting up here on my, that's not dripping anymore? That's about how you want it. So what you're going to do is you're going to come over here. I've got this in a rod stand now, so slide this down a little bit so we have some room to work. And hopefully you can still see. Perfect. Get that alcohol ready too. Get those rags ready with that alcohol. You're going to need it. Now, we're just going to go ahead and kind of drizzle this on here. Work this on back and forth. And again, you can never have too much. What the rod doesn't want, it will tell you by spitting it out, and then you can clean it up. You don't want to clean up a giant mess, but at the same time, you don't want to put, you want to put enough on it. If you don't put enough on it, it ain't going to sit. And the aft grip is one of the worst parts, because you're going backwards when you're pulling a fish, and that thing comes loose, the whole thing comes off. Notice I also put tape around the end of the reel seat. That's just to protect it from getting a bunch of epoxy all over it. Alright, I think we're just about there. Got a nice thick coat of epoxy on there. Probably too much. Let's go ahead and work it on up. We're going to slide it and spin it at the same time. Oh yeah, we got way too much on there. Set this down and take a lot of this back off before we go any further. See what I mean by the rod will tell you what she doesn't want? She didn't want a lot of that, did she? Alright. Alright, we're just cleaning off all that excess right now with a paper towel. I always start out with paper towels because they're disposable and cheap, with a little bit of rubbing alcohol on it. So again, rubbing alcohol on a paper towel to start out with. After you get that set, clean off your hands and throw it away. And what I like to do is come back with a very coarse cloth and really clean that up now. Again, that's got rubbing alcohol on it. I got it ready before I mixed up the epoxy. All right. Let's take a look down the end of that, and it looks good. Let's move back. Now, we've already got this pre-cut arbor ready to go. We're going to place that right here. It's going to double as an extra seat for this aft grip, so that aft grip will no longer move, because this is actually slightly larger than the hole in the aft grip, preventing it from sliding back. But then on top of that, it should be the perfect diameter for our next piece. which will allow us to slide this up, boom, and not lose again all the epoxy. So let's get the epoxy in this piece now. And notice when I put this on, I spin it. That's just to help that tape from unraveling. All right. Stir that epoxy up. Get it nice and thinned out. Put that on there. Careful to keep your hands clean, guys. If you get epoxy on it and then hit your components, it's detrimental that you know you got epoxy on it, because you got to clean it up immediately. Otherwise it dries up and it's definitely harder to get off. You can get it off, but then you got to use heat. And heat and fishing rods aren't the two greatest things to combine. Of course, that's how we took it apart to begin with. We all remember that, right? Alright, so we're almost at the end of this one, where we got a nice big old fat coat on this. And now we can start sliding and working and working and sliding this guy up. Alright. Again, grab a paper towel first. Put the alcohol on it. Roll that around. All right. Last, we get that fighting butt on. All right. The other things I'll put some epoxy right in that hole there. I'm going to pull that off real quick to allow that epoxy to come out. second. Alright, now the reason that I took that paper towel out of the cup of epoxy is this little leftover epoxy right here. When this dries up and cures and forms a stone, you know that right there dried up and cured and formed a stone. So I like to leave this as my timer. That lets me know when it's done. Again, we gotta go back with a cloth here, clean all this off with a rag. Alright, just last but not least, we put the fighting butt cap on. This always goes inside. Just make sure that's on there. Let's spin that bad boy around a couple times both directions. Alright. Now we're all glued up. Again, just touch it up with the cleanliness, set the epoxy aside. That'll be your timer to let you know when she's cured up. And we'll move on to that next step, gang.